I have slept many eons, the god said forlornly. My dreams have been dark. I wake fitfully, and each time my waking is shorter. Now we are near the end. Hi, hello, welcome to my channel. I am Jan, and we are here to discuss the events of the Battle of the Labyrinth, Book 4 in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. War has officially begun between Kronos' army and the Olympians. Everyone is on red alert, waiting for Luke's first attack when Annabeth gets her first quest. Our story begins with Percy going to freshman orientation at Good High School on East 81st Street in Manhattan during his summer break. Paul Blowfist helped Percy to get him into it, the guy Sally is officially dating. Speaking of dates, as Sally drops off Percy, she reminds him that after orientation, he can go to camp, and he has his date with Annabeth to look forward to later that day. They're going to the movies together. Before he can go inside, he spots a familiar head of frizzy red hair and decides to go around to the side entrance. There, he runs into two cheerleaders, one of whom is named Kelly. Percy notes that they smell like freshly washed horses. Paul Blowfist finds him, ushering him down the hall, but Percy bumps into Kelly, kneeing her in her leg, which makes a hollow metallic sound. Percy is still trying to avoid the redhead and run towards the gym, leaving Paul behind. But he still runs into her, Rachel Elizabeth Dare. She also lives in New York, but they're interrupted by the cheerleaders talking to the students. They introduce themselves as Tammy and Kelly, but Rachel makes a scared noise telling Percy to run. They make a break towards the exit. Together they hide out in the band room where Percy explains how she can see through the mist, the gods are real, and that he is a half-blood. Then Tammy and Kelly show up.
Shit, here we go again.
There, Percy tries fighting off the monsters, who are revealed to be Empusai, vampires who drain the blood of heroes. Rachel does her fair share by throwing instruments at one of the Empusai before Percy slashes with Riptide, turning Tammy to dust. Kelly tricks Percy into chasing her in front of Paul and other mortals before she spontaneously combusts, making Percy look like he started a fire in the school. Rachel tells him to get out of there, and he does, running into Annabeth outside, with Rachel following after demanding an explanation for everything. Annabeth is not happy to see Rachel, immediately jealous that Percy even knows another girl. To be a 15-year-old with jealousy issues. Annabeth and Percy leave Rachel, who gives Percy her number, and they take a taxi to camp together. On the way, Percy calls his mom to tell her what happened, and that he'll be staying at camp until things cool down.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
At camp, the summer session is already underway. Annabeth tells Percy she'll go talk to Clarice, who she has been working with lately. She tells him she'll see him later at the hearing.
What's that supposed to mean?
Percy goes to the arena to sword train, where he meets Quintus, the new sword trainer, and his pet hellhound, Mrs. O'Leary. Quintus is filling in for Mr. D, who is away, helping ensure old acquaintances are on the side of the Olympians, like the minor gods and such. Quintus has a birthmark on his neck that Percy is not able to make out, and he had the arena full of crates labeled Triple G Ranch. The crates themselves contain living things of some kind. Kieran shows up and takes Percy to see Grover at his hearing with the Council of Cloven elders in the camp woods. There he sees not only his best friend, but also the council, 3 old satyrs, Annabeth, Clarice, and a tree nymph, Grover's girlfriend, Juniper. It is not going well for Grover. The council, Silenus, Linnaeus, and Marin, agree to give Grover 1 week to prove his claims that he heard the god of the wild, Pan, speak to him. If he cannot, he will be stripped of his searcher's license and forced to find a new career.
That's rough, buddy.
When Grover tells Percy he thinks it's hopeless, Clarice chimes in that there is another option, without elaborating. Annabeth says she'll explain later. Right now it's cabin inspection time. Percy races to his cabin, knowing he'll have to clean it, and is surprised to find Tyson there, already cleaning up. Selena Beauregard tells them they passed inspection. Later, Tyson and Percy meet with Annabeth at the canoe lake, where she tells him what the other option was. Apparently it was something Clarice scouted out, but it's dangerous for Grover, she says. Tyson mentions that the satyr makes him nervous, which is hilarious because Grover is made nervous by Tyson and all other monsters. Then Tyson and Percy visit Quintus in the sword arena where Percy practices his sword fighting. He asks Quintus about the tattoo on his neck, which he notices looks more like a brand, and Quintus says it's a reminder. That night in his cabin, Percy gets a collect Iris message call, and when he answers, he sees Nico on the shores of the river Styx throwing mythomagic cards into a fire. He is accompanied by a ghost who promises a way to get Bianca back, a soul for a soul. The ghost also mentions having helped Nico already by leading him out of the maze.
What's that supposed to mean?
When the iris message ends, Percy thinks the soul Nico wants to use to bring his sister back from the dead with is his. That morning, the campers learned an Ethiopian draken was spotted just outside the camp, which was protected by its magical borders. Lee Fletcher, son of Apollo, chased it away after shooting it full of arrows. At breakfast, Grover sits at Percy's table with Tyson, who quickly excuses himself. Kieran is hoping Percy will convince Grover of something. Annabeth says it's the Labyrinth. Apparently, Clarice was sent to scout it after finding Chris Rodriguez in Phoenix, Arizona. He was wandering around, mumbling about string, and told him that Luke and his army were exploring it. Annabeth, who is obsessed with the Labyrinth and its creator, Daedalus, helped Clarice out a bit. They think Luke may be looking for Ariadne's string to navigate the tunnels. So Luke is trying to find Ariadne's string, I said. Why? What's he planning? Annabeth shook her head. I don't know. I thought maybe he wanted to invade camp through the maze, but that doesn't make any sense. The closest entrances Clarice found were in Manhattan, which wouldn't help Luke get past our borders. Clarice explored a little way into the tunnels, but it was very dangerous. She had some close calls. I researched everything I could find about Daedalus. I'm afraid it didn't help much. I don't understand exactly what Luke's planning, but I do know this. The Labyrinth might be the key to Grover's problem. I blinked. You think Pan is underground? It would explain why he's been impossible to find. Grover shuddered. Satyrs hate going underground. No searcher would ever try going in that place. No flowers, no sunshine, no coffee shops. But, Annabeth said, the labyrinth can lead you almost anywhere. It reads your thoughts. It was designed to fool you, to trick you, and kill you. But if you can make the labyrinth work for you, it could lead you to the wild god, I said. That afternoon he visits Blackjack and has a talk with him, and thinks to himself when he leaves that he may not see the Pegasus for a long time. That night, Quintus has the campers pair up for a game in the woods to hunt monsters. First to find the golden laurels wins. Percy and Annabeth get paired up, as do Grover and Tyson. Annabeth and Percy run into 3 giant scorpions on their own and are backed into a crevice that seals shut behind them. Annabeth realizes it's a corridor and informs Percy they need to look for the Mark of Daedalus. They find it, a Greek delta, and it opens up again. The whole camp is out there. They were looking for Annabeth and Percy for over an hour. They realize that the young heroes found an entrance to the labyrinth inside the camp borders. Time moves differently inside it, so even though it was only a few moments for them, a whole hour passed on the surface. Kieran tells them they'll talk about it in the morning. That night, Percy has a dream about Daedalus being imprisoned with his son, Icarus, by a king. In the morning, Kieran calls a war council meeting in the sword arena. There, the demigods agree they have to find Daedalus, who is rumored to have gone back into the labyrinth toward the end of his life, as he is the only one who can navigate and control the maze. They agree Annabeth should lead the quest, as she has read the most about the labyrinth. Clarice doesn't even want to go back in. Annabeth goes up to speak with the oracle. While waiting, Percy speaks with Juniper, who mentions that she saw Quintus poking around the entrance to the labyrinth, warning Percy not to trust the old man. Then Percy runs towards the big house. Before he can run up the stairs, he hears crying from the basement, where he finds Chris Rodriguez being comforted by Clarice LaRue of all people. He'd been driven to madness by the maze. Clarice kept trying to calm him, telling him that Mr. D is an expert in madness and can help when he returns. Then Percy runs off, back towards the arena. Annabeth returns, but is tight-lipped about the prophecy details. You shall delve in the darkness of the endless maze, the dead, the traitor, and the lost one raise. You shall rise or fall by the ghost king's hand, the child of Athena's final stand. And something about destroy with the hero's final breath. She picks Percy, Grover, and Tyson to go on the quest with her. Kieran reminds her about the ancient law about traveling with only 3 and how it's bad luck to go against the ancient rules. She is adamant though, and Kieran relents.
You sure about that?
Quintus pulls Percy aside after the meeting, telling him that he doesn't think it's a good idea. He advises Percy to focus on what matters most, and he may get through the maze. Then he gives him a Stygian ice whistle, made from the water from the river Styx, telling him it will summon Mrs. O'Leary but will only work once. Percy goes to find Annabeth in the Athena cabin. She's rifling through old scrolls about the labyrinth. Her and Percy talk, with Annabeth feeling worried that she's making a mistake bringing her friends. Percy tries reassuring her, and the daughter of Athena reaches out for a hug. They're caught by her half-brother Malcolm coming to get her for archery practice, and the two split off immediately. That night, Percy has a dream about Luke aboard the Princess Andromeda talking to Kronos. They mention that the quest being called fell right into their plans, and for Luke to ready the army for Kronos to lead them into battle. He's almost fully reformed. Then Kelly, the cheerleader, walks in, and he immediately senses Percy watching, lunging at him, and he wakes up. He notices that the water fountain in his room is showing an iris message of Nico again. This time he's in a graveyard with the ghost from before, in front of a freshly dug hole that he begins pouring Coca-Cola and Happy Meals into, summoning the spirit of Theseus. Theseus confirms that one can exchange a soul for a soul, and recognizes the ghost. He also tells Nico, "The labyrinth is treacherous. There is only one thing that saw me through, the love of a mortal girl. The string was only part of the answer. It was the princess who guided me." The message begins to glow brighter and brighter until Percy uncaps Riptide and slashes through the fountain. Tyson finds him standing there in the morning, still holding the sword. They meet Grover, Annabeth, and Kieran in the woods by the labyrinth exit. Campers have been setting up a defensive perimeter around it. Before setting off, Percy tells Kieran about his dream, with Kieran mentioning that Luke probably wants to seek out Daedalus to have him craft a new body for Kronos. Percy also tells him what Juniper said about Quintus, but Kieran already knows Quintus is shady. With that, Annabeth, Grover, Tyson, and Percy walk into the labyrinth. They get barely 100 feet into the maze before they're lost. The tunnels keep moving and the labyrinth is like a patchwork of architecture and history constantly growing. They wander through a Roman room, a wine cellar, a sewer, and back to the Roman room where they run into the two-faced god, Janus. He wants Annabeth to make a choice, as he is the god of choices, but she doesn't have to at the moment because Hera, the queen of the gods, shows up and dismisses the minor god, postponing Annabeth's choice for now. Hera advises Annabeth to seek out her son Hephaestus, who admired Daedalus. She also grants her wish to have a way to navigate the maze. Hera says Percy already knows how, but when she leaves, Percy admits he's clueless. Together they press on. The tunnels lead them into Alcatraz prison, where they find a 100-handed one, Briareus, who is being held prisoner by the monster Campe. The heroes try convincing Briareus to join them, but he's grown hopeless. They ask about his brothers, but he says they faded. "What exactly do you mean, they faded?" I asked. "I thought monsters were immortal, like the gods." "Percy," Grover said weakly, "even immortality has limits. Sometimes monsters get forgotten, and they lose their will to stay immortal." Looking at Grover's face, I wondered if he was thinking of Pan. I remember something Medusa had told us once, how her sisters, the other two Gorgons, had passed on and left her alone. Then, last year, Apollo said something about the old god, Helios, disappearing and leaving him with the duties of the sun god. I never thought about it too much, but now, looking at Briareus, I realized how terrible it would be to be so old, thousands and thousands of years old, and totally alone. Percy's able to trick Briareus with rock, paper, scissors to come with them for now. Together, the five sneak into the prison yard where there is a tour happening. Then Campe comes barreling through the walls, chasing them. Hopelessly outmatched, they run.
Oh, why do I have to run every 8 minutes of my life?
Back towards the labyrinth, while Tyson causes a distraction. They find the mark of Daedalus, the Greek delta, and rush into the maze as Tyson comes running. Campe is behind him, but Percy throws his shield at her, giving the Cyclops just enough time to get into the labyrinth. Once they're safe, the heroes try convincing Briareus to join and fight against the Titans once more, but he's grown disillusioned with his imprisonment and wanders into the maze all by himself. They make camp for the night. Percy can't sleep, so he stays up with Annabeth talking for a while, about the quest, the prophecy, and how Nico is down there somewhere. Percy offers to take watch for the night so Annabeth can sleep. When he does rest, he dreams about the old man Daedalus and his son Icarus in the labyrinth prison. They build metal wings to escape King Minos, but Icarus's wings fail and he plummets to his demise. Percy wakes up and the group keeps traveling. He doesn't tell the others about his dream. They eventually come across the remnants of Nico summoning more dead until they find a cattle guard with the red cow poking around it. Tyson helps them through and they find themselves on a ranch. Nearby are the red cattle sacred to the sun god Apollo. They're soon greeted by Ercion, son of Ares, and the two-headed dog Orthus. He mentions another demigod came through recently, and they suspect it was Nico. Ercion advises them to go back into the maze, but they're adamant about finding Nico, so he takes him to meet his boss. They meet Garyon, the owner of Triple G Ranch, and he gives them a tour. They see the other monsters on the ranch, like fire-breathing horses and man-eating horses and Hepalectrion, rooster horses, a lot of horses. Also giant scorpions like the ones Quintus had.
Coincidence? I think not!
Garyon runs a shoddy business, selling endangered mythical animals to anyone with money to pay for whatever they want. Nico talks to Garyon, telling him that his ghost told him Garyon could point Nico towards a worthy soul. My ghost told me you could help. He said you could guide us to the soul we need. Wait a second, I said. I thought I was the soul you wanted. Nico looked at me like I was crazy. You? Why would I want you? Bianca's soul is worth 1,000 of yours. Now, can you help me, Garyon, or not? We find out that the ghost is King Minos, the cruel tyrant that held Daedalus and Icarus prisoner. And Garyon plans to sell the half-bloods, including Nico, to Luke Castellan. Percy offers to clean the flesh-eating horse stables in exchange for their freedom, and the monster gives him till sunset. At first, Percy isn't sure what to make of it, but gets the idea to use the river. The local naiad isn't happy about her river being polluted again, first by Hercules, but offers the son of Poseidon advice. I'll tell you a secret, son of the sea god. Scoop up some dirt. What? You heard me. I crouched down and scooped up a handful of Texas dirt. It was dry and black and spotted with tiny clumps of white rock. No, something besides rock. Those are shells, the naiad said. Petrified seashells, millions of years ago, even before the time of the gods, when only Gaia and Uranus reigned. This land was underwater. It was part of the sea. Suddenly I saw what she meant. There was little pieces of ancient sea urchins in my hand, mollusk shells. Even the limestone rocks had impressions of seashells embedded in them. Okay, I said. What good does this do me? You're not so different from me, demigod. Even when I'm out of the water is within me. It is my life source. She stepped back, put her feet in the river, and smiled. I hope you find a way to rescue your friends. With this, he uses the fossilized seashells in the dirt to summon blasts of water to clean the stables in minutes. When he gets back to the ranch house and demands Garyon free them, Garyon says Percy didn't make him swear on the river Styx, so their oath is non-binding. When Urchion refuses to kill Percy for Garyon, he has to fight the demigod himself. Percy is able to hold his own, but Garyon has 3 hearts, so he's nearly impossible to kill unless you strike them all at once. That's when Percy notices the bow and arrow on the wall, and praying to Apollo and Artemis, he is able to strike Garyon side on, striking all 3 of his hearts. Percy unties his friends and tells Urchion that he has the chance to change if he wants to, treat the animals better, etc. Urchion likes the sound of that. Nico doesn't trust Percy and the others though, still wanting to reanimate his sister Bianca, but Percy says to try talking to her spirit one more time because she's the one who's been sending him iris messages of Nico. Arishan helps them out with a hole and some offerings to call her soul forth. Minos is the first spirit to appear and says some choice words. Daedalus cares nothing for you half-bloods, Minos warned. You can't trust him. He is old beyond counting and crafty. He is bitter from the guilt of murder and is cursed by the gods. The guilt of murder, I asked. Who did he kill? Do not change the subject, the ghost growled. You are hindering Nico. You try to persuade him to give up his goal. I would make him a lord. Enough, Minos, Nico demanded. The ghost sneered. Master, these are your enemies. You must not listen to them. Let me protect you. I will turn their minds to madness as I did the others. The others? Annabeth gasped. You mean Chris Rodriguez? That was you? The maze is my property, the ghost said. Not Daedalus's. Those who intrude deserve madness. Begone, Minos, Nico demanded. I want to see my sister. When Bianca does answer, she tells Nico that he must let go of the grudge against Percy, that for children of Hades, that is their fatal flaw. Poor Nico. He just wants his sister back, but she tells him to learn to forgive and depart soon after. The heroes spend the night at Triple G Ranch. Percy has a dream about Luke preparing to journey into the maze with Ariadne String, Campy, and his army. Then the dream shifts, and Percy sees the day Daedalus grew jealous and killed his nephew Perdix, and how he was punished with a brand on his neck by his mother Athena.
I was in pure shock.
Percy wakes up to Grover watching the Nature Channel at 2 in the morning. They learn they've been gone 7 days. His deadline with the Council of Cloven Elders already passed. Once he gets back to camp, they'll revoke his searcher's license. In the morning, they get ready to head back into the Labyrinth. Nico is going to stay behind. He has a lot to think about. Urchion gives our heroes a device to find Hephaestus' forge, and they follow it into the maze. They follow the spider until they're stopped by the Sphinx, who wants to test their intelligence, but Annabeth gets frustrated with the simplicity of the questions and refuses to play, so they have to fight their way out, escaping from the Sphinx. The spider leads them to Hephaestus' forge, where they speak with him about wanting to find Daedalus. Tyson also lets it slip how disappointed he was to meet Briareus, and the smith god tells him not to trust others. The god offers to tell the heroes what they want to know if they do him a favor, find out who's been sneaking into his forge. His forge is under Mount St. Helens and is where the monster Typhon is trapped. He's worried whatever is sneaking into his forge means to free Typhon. As they follow the spider through the labyrinth, they come across a tunnel full of roots. Grover says it must lead to Pan. They have to split up. Tyson offers to go with him, saying that he trusts his friends, unlike Hephaestus. Annabeth and Percy arrive at the forge, where Annabeth sneaks in with the invisibility cap, and Percy does so the old-fashioned way, by hiding in a cart. He overhears some Telkines, or sea demons, talking about monster puberty. They want revenge for the gods casting them into Tartarus after they used their talents to forge some of their gods' best weapons, like Poseidon's trident. When the Telkines spot Percy, he runs for it.
Oh, why do I have to run every 8 minutes of my life?
And runs into Annabeth. They realize the Telkines are fusing metals to craft a weapon for the Titans. He tells her to get out and tell Hephaestus while he distracts the enemy. She kisses Percy before leaving. When she is gone, Percy is quickly surrounded as the Telkines start throwing lava at him, slowly burning him up, but he's saved from instantly dying by his father's power. Then Percy draws on the power of the sea in the moment and causes the mountain to explode, shooting him out like a comet. Percy wakes up on the island of Ogygia with a girl named Calypso. She's not very inviting at first, but after some time, the two grow close. That's when it's revealed that her getting close to heroes only for them to leave her in the end is her curse for being a daughter of Atlas and supporting him in the previous war. She cannot even leave the island and has no idea how much the world has changed in the last few thousand years. Hephaestus visits at one point, telling Percy how he calls the eruption of Mount St. Helens and for Typhon to stir. Then he tells him the answer to his question, if he chooses to leave, that is. Possibly, hard to say with her, but if you decide to leave this place, and I don't say what's right or wrong, then I promise you an answer to your quest. I promise you the way to Daedalus. Well, now here's the thing. It has nothing to do with Ariadne's string. Not really. Sure, the string works, that's what the Titans' army will be after, but the best way through the maze? Theseus had the princess's help, and the princess was a regular mortal. Not a drop of godblood in her. But she was clever, and she could see, lad. She could see very clearly. So what I'm saying, I think you know how to navigate the maze. It finally sank in. Why hadn't I seen it before? Hera had been right. The answer was there all the time. Yeah, I said. Yeah, I know. Then he goes to talk with Calypso, who offers him the chance to stay, but he turns it down, wanting to help his friend. She gives him a moonlace flower for his mother, and he leaves on a magical raft back home. He arrives in Camp Half-Blood a few hours later, where the camp seems deserted. Everyone is gathered in the amphitheater, preparing to burn his burial shroud, when Annabeth spots him and demands to know where he's been. He was gone for 2 weeks. Charon takes them to the big house to discuss things further, though. There, Percy tells them about Mount St. Helens, Hephaestus' answer, and his own plan. I told them my idea. Annabeth's jaw dropped. Percy, that's crazy. Charon sat back in his wheelchair and stroked his beard. There is precedent, however. Theseus had the help of Ariadne. Harriet Tubman, daughter of Hermes,
Who?
used many mortals on her underground railroad for just this reason. But this is my quest, Annabeth said. I need to lead it. Chiron looked uncomfortable. My dear, it is your quest, but you need help. And this is supposed to help? Please, it's wrong. It's cowardly. It's hard to admit we need a mortal's help, I said. But it's true. When Annabeth storms out, Chiron tells Percy how Chris Rodriguez's condition had deteriorated further and how Quintus had disappeared and may be a spy, but he left Mrs. O'Leary. Percy visits the Hellhound and runs into Clarice, who wants him to kill Daedalus because of what the maze did to Chris. That night, he dreams about King Minos being killed by princesses in a bathtub that Daedalus set a trap in. Then he retreats into the maze for good. Then the dream shifts to Luke and his army in the maze, when the group finds a lone half-blood wandering the labyrinth. The next morning, Percy visits Mrs. O'Leary again and asks Beckendorf to keep an eye on her. Then him and Annabeth are driven into Manhattan. They visit his mother first and catch her up. Percy promises to explain things to Paul Blowfist when the quest is over. Then Percy calls Rachel Elizabeth Dare and they meet in Times Square. She's there doing an art project coated in gold paint. The demigods tell her everything and she agrees to help them. When they describe the Greek delta that marks the entrance to the labyrinth, she takes him to the Marriott where there is a doorway in the basement.
She's an icon, she's a legend, and she is the moment. Now come on now.
Inside the labyrinth, we learn that she can see a faint glow leading them in the right direction. She can sense traps and monsters in the wrong directions. It's like mortals get superpowers inside the labyrinth. Like how in Danny Phantom, Danny and his friends were more powerful in the ghost dimension as humans than they were if they were ghosts. It leads them to an arena where Luke is waiting with Antaeus, a son of Poseidon and Gaia. Luke is trading entertainment in the form of fights to get his army past this point and trades a captured Percy to fight. First, Percy makes quick work of a Dracone, which Antaeus doesn't like. Then he fights Ethan Nakamaru, a son of the minor goddess Nemesis. Percy spares Ethan, angering Antaeus further. Percy challenges the giant to a fight in exchange for their freedom. At first, he is not doing well. Antaeus just keeps regenerating faster than Percy can attack. Then Percy gets the idea to chain him to the ceiling before striking the final blow, killing the giant once and for all.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
But with Antaeus dead, Luke doesn't have to keep the giant's promise. He plans to have them killed, but Percy blows the Stygian ice whistle and Mrs. O'Leary appears, helping cause a commotion for the heroes, including Ethan, to flee into the maze. They run until they're sure they're not being followed, Rachel leading them the whole way. When they stop, they try to convince Ethan to continue on with them, but he refuses, running off into the maze. The trio make camp for the night, Annabeth commenting how Luke seems strange.
That's suspicious.
She leaves to gather firewood, a bit upset at the whole situation, especially Rachel being there. Percy asks Rachel why her parents wouldn't care where she was, but she pretends to go to sleep. When Annabeth returns, she offers to take first watch while Percy rests. He has a dream about Kronos speaking to him, telling him he couldn't have done it without Percy. Then he shows him Tyson and Grover being attacked by a giant snake monster before he wakes up to an earthquake shaking the labyrinth. Together, the heroes run through the maze, following Rachel, escaping from collapsing tunnels. She leads them straight to the workshop of Daedalus, in the heart of the maze.
We did it! We did it! We did it! Yay!
The workshop windows overlook Colorado Springs, the garden of the gods. Quintus appears, telling them that the labyrinth often shows that place. Quintus explains that he is Daedalus, and that he was branded for the murder of Perdix, who Athena turned into a partridge. He transferred his soul into an automaton. Quintus means fifth because it's his fifth body, and his life force is tied to the labyrinth. Luke had told him one story about Camp Half-Blood, and so Quintus decided to investigate the claims for himself, see if the camp was worth saving. But the trio were too late. He had already given Luke Ariadne's string to navigate the maze. Luke promised Quintus a second chance to reunite with his son and make amends with Perdix. They're interrupted by the arrival of Kelly, a chained-up Nico, and Minos. Minos tricked Nico into going back into the maze, saying the others were in danger, and Luke betrayed Quintus, preferring to honor Minos' request in exchange for Nico.
Surprise, surprise.
All Hades breaks loose as Percy and Annabeth fight off Kelly to give Rachel time to get to the wings. Nico escapes his chains and uses his powers as a son of Hades to banish the spirit of Minos. Annabeth saves Percy and slays the Empusa. Daedalus and Mrs. O'Leary are locked in combat with the remaining giants, the inventor refusing to leave Mrs. O'Leary. But there's no time to help as the four heroes flee the battle through the window.
Oh, why do I have to run every 8 minutes of my life?
They fly down and land just as the wings begin to break apart. Rachel offers to help get them a ride into the city. Annabeth and Nico go into a shop to get a prism to send an iris message to camp. Rachel speaks with the chauffeur and somehow gets him to give them a ride in his fancy limo. Annabeth says Chiron is readying the campers for battle. They ride into the city and look around for another entrance into the labyrinth, but don't find one initially. Rachel spots the Western Museum of Mining and Industry and has a driver drop them off. The trio heads back into the labyrinth, and Nico and Percy have a conversation about Daedalus, and Nico says no one should be able to avoid death. Then they come to a tunnel that Rachel says leads to evil and smells like eucalyptus, like Mount Tam in San Francisco. Percy says he has to check it out, alone, and Annabeth gives him her invisibility cap. He emerges on Mount Tam, watching as a group of Telkynes and Ethan Nakamaru present a reforged weapon of Kronos. It's half celestial bronze and half steel, like Backbiter. Percy runs ahead, invisible wearing the Yankees cap, and finds Kronos' sarcophagus. He opens it to find the body of Luke inside, but the moment is interrupted by the Telkynes arriving. They present the weapon, and Ethan swears his loyalty to the Titan Lord, despite Percy's pleading not to. Then Luke stands from the sarcophagus, fully formed and golden-eyed, a new body for the Titan Lord. Kronos spends a few moments toying with Percy, flinging him against the wall and approaching slowly, but then Rachel yells for Percy and throws a blue plastic hairbrush at the Titan Lord.
She's an icon.
disorienting him long enough for Percy to run towards Rachel, Nico, and Annabeth, and they all flee back into the labyrinth. They rest for a moment with Percy telling Nico that now the Titan Lord knows he's a child of Hades, and Annabeth saying that Luke isn't completely gone. Then they continue walking until they find Grover's hat and Tyson's footprints. They decide to follow it and find Tyson holding an unconscious Grover. Tyson tells them that he passed out after saying they were close. They wake up Grover and continue down into the cavern. Annabeth says they must be in an unexplored section of Carlsbad Cavern. The cavern eventually opens onto a large space where they find the Lord of the Wild, Pan, and many extinct species of fauna gathered around the fading god. The god tells Grover some things. "I have slept many eons," the god said forlornly. "My dreams have been dark. I wake fitfully, and each time my waking is shorter. Now we are near the end." "What?" Grover cried. "But no, you're right here." "My dear satyr," Pan said, "I tried to tell the world 2,000 years ago. I announced it to Lysis, a satyr very much like you. He lived in Ephesus, and he tried to spread the word." Annabeth's eyes widened. "The old story. A sailor passing by the coast of Ephesus heard a voice crying from the shore. Tell them the great god Pan is dead." "But that wasn't true," Grover said. "Your kind never believed it," Pan said. "You sweet, stubborn satyrs refused to accept my passing, and I love you for that, but you only delayed the inevitable. You only prolonged my long, painful passing, my dark twilight sleep. It must end." "No!" Grover's voice trembled. "Dear Grover," Pan said, "you must accept the truth. Your companion Nico, he understands." Nico nodded slowly. "He's dying. He should have died long ago. This is more like a memory." "But gods can't die," Grover said. "They can fade," Pan said, "when everything they stood for is gone, when they cease to have power and their sacred place disappears. The wild, my dear Grover, is so small now, so shattered, that no god can save it. My Rome is gone. That is why I need you to carry a message. You must go back to the council. You must tell the satyrs and the dryads and the other spirits of nature that the great god Pan is dead. Tell them of my passing, because they must stop waiting for me to save them. I cannot. The only salvation you must make yourself. Each of you must." He stopped and frowned at the dodo bird, who had started humming again. "Didi, what are you doing?" Pan demanded. "Are you singing Kumbaya again?" Didi looked up innocently and blinked her yellow eyes. Pan sighed. "Everybody's a cynic, but as I was saying, my dear Grover, each of you must take up my calling." "But, no," Grover whimpered. "Be strong," Pan said. "You have found me, and now you must release me. You must carry on my spirit. It can no longer be carried by a god. It must be taken up by all of you." He also tells Percy not to worry, that fear won't control him when the time comes. He tells Annabeth that her time is coming soon, to play a role she will wish she didn't have to play. He tells Tyson that heroes rarely live up to expectations, and that he will live on in Cyclops' memory. Then he tells Rachel that even though she strives to make amends, she is just as important as her father.
What do you mean?
Then he asks Grover if he will take up the call, and tells the others that the great god Pan is dead, and reluctantly he accepts. Then he fades, leaving behind energy that flows into each of them. They're left alone. Even the animals had vanished. Now it was just a dark cave. They don't wander much longer before they're back at the Marriott, and then head out into an alley where Percy whistles for Blackjack, who brings a few other Pegasi. Rachel stays behind, telling Percy he should call her sometime. She also confesses that her dad is a famous businessman. Percy doesn't care though, only judging her by her actions. Then the heroes fly off. They arrive at Camp Half-Blood and land in the cabin area where Chiron, Selinus, and some Apollo campers greet them. They fill them in on Quintus, Kronos, and Pan before heading into the woods to meet the vanguard that approaches from the Labyrinth. It was the biggest military operation I'd ever seen at camp. Everyone was at the clearing, dressed in full battle armor, but this time it wasn't for capture the flag. The Hephaestus cabin had set up traps around the entrance to the labyrinth. Razor wire, pits filled with pots of Greek fire, rows of sharpened sticks to deflect a charge. Beckendorf was manning 2 catapults the size of pickup trucks, already primed and aimed at Zeus's fist. The Ares cabin was on the front line, drilling in phalanx formation with Clarice's calling orders. Apollo's and Hermes' cabin were scattered in the woods with bows ready. Many had taken up positions in the trees. Even the dryads were armed with bows, and the satyrs trotted around with wooden cudgels and shields made of rough tree bark. Annabeth went to join her brethren from the Athena cabin, who had set up a command tent and were directing operations. A gray banner with an owl fluttered outside the tent. Our chief security, Argus, stood guard at the door. Aphrodite's children running around straining everybody's armor and offering to comb the tangles out of our horsehair plumes. Even Dionysus' kids had found something to do. The god himself was still nowhere to be seen, but his two blonde twin sons were running around providing all the sweaty warriors with water bottles and juice boxes.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Chiron has Percy stay beside him so he can direct him to where they need reinforcements, and then the Titans' army explodes out of the labyrinth. Less Dragonian giants, Draconae, even Campi is amongst the invaders. Nico summons some undead warriors. Percy is sent after a hellhound and helps Grover and Juniper stop a potential forest fire from destroying the woods. But things aren't looking good for the campers until Daedalus, Mrs. O'Leary, and Briareus fight their way out of the labyrinth. Briareus gets rid of Campi, but Chiron is cornered by some giants. Then, Grover lets loose a horrible sound that causes the enemy to flee back into the labyrinth. Tyson calls for Percy. Nico needs help. He had pushed his limits summoning so many zombies at once. He's given some nectar and begins feeling better. Then Daedalus shows up, telling them that as long as he lives, the labyrinth exists, and so he must pass on now. Before he does, he gives Annabeth his laptop with all his unfinished work and projects for her to improve upon. Then he offers Nico his soul, but the son of Hades doesn't seek to bring back Bianca anymore, and Percy is given Mrs. O'Leary to care for. Then Nico releases Daedalus' spirit, destroying the labyrinth once and for all. There were too many goodbyes. That night was the first time I actually saw camp burial shrouds used on bodies, and it was not something I wanted to see again. Among the dead, Lee Fletcher from the Apollo cabin had been downed by a giant's club. He was wrapped in a golden shroud without any decoration. The son of Dionysus, who'd gone down fighting an enemy half-blood, was wrapped in a deep purple shroud embroidered with grapevines. His name was Castor. I was ashamed that I'd seen him around camp for 3 years and never even bothered to learn his name. He'd been 17 years old. His twin brother Pollux tried to say a few words, but he choked up and just took the torch. He lit the funeral pyre in the middle of the amphitheater, and within seconds, the row of shrouds was engulfed in fire, sending smoke and sparks up to the stars. That afternoon, the Council of Cloven Elders holds an emergency meeting to hear Grover out. Satyrs, dryads, and naiads all show up to hear his story. They learn the sound he made at the Battle of the Labyrinth
He said it!
was a panic, a power gifted to him by the god Pan. Selinus and the others refuse to hear Grover out, but Dionysus appears, defending Grover alongside Chiron. The vote ends in a tie, but Grover doesn't care. He knows what his duty is now, to help spread the message that it's up to them, mortals and satyrs and nymphs, to protect nature. Tyson gives Briareus directions to the Cyclops forges to help teach them to make weapons and armor. Nico says goodbye to Bianca's spirit and to the camp, saying he has questions he needs answered. Then Dionysus talks with Percy, showing him that he healed Chris. I turned to Dionysus. You cured him? Madness is my specialty. It was quite simple. But you did something nice. Why? He raised an eyebrow. I am nice. I simply ooze niceness, Perry Johansson. Haven't you noticed? Perhaps I felt grieved by my son's death. Perhaps I thought this Chris boy deserved a second chance. At any rate, it seems to have improved Clarice's mood. Why are you telling me this? The wine god sighed. Oh, Hades if I know. But remember, boy, that a kind act can sometimes be as powerful as a sword. As a mortal, I was never a great fighter or athlete or poet. I only made wine. The people in my village laughed at me. They said I would never amount to anything. Look at me now. Sometimes small things can become very large indeed. The rest of the summer is uneventful, although Annabeth and Percy have kind of been avoiding each other. On the last day in August, Percy readies to go home. Annabeth is going to stay a bit longer and then head to a private school in San Francisco. She tells Percy the final line of the prophecy, and lose a love to worse than death. She had lost Luke to the will of Kronos. Then Hera appears to talk to the demigods. Hera, Annabeth said. The goddess smiled. You found the answers, as I knew you would. Your quest was a success. A success, Annabeth said. Luke is gone. Daedalus is dead. Pan is dead. How is that? Our family is safe, Hera insisted. Those others are better gone, my dear. I am proud of you. I balled my fists. I couldn't believe she was saying this. You're the one who paid Garyon to let us do the ranch, weren't you? Hera shrugged. Her dress shimmered in rainbow colors. I wanted to speed you on your way. But you didn't care about Nico. You were happy to see him turned over to the Titans. Oh, please, Hera waved her hand dismissively. The son of Hades said it himself. No one wants him around. He doesn't belong.
Let me pretend I care. Okay, I'm done.
Hephaestus was right, I growled. You only care about your perfect family, not real people. Her eyes turned dangerously bright. Watch yourself, son of Poseidon. I guided you more than you know in the maze. I was at your side when you faced Geryon. I let your arrow fly straight. I sent you to Calypso's island. I opened the way to the Titan's mountain. Annabeth, my dear, surely you see how I've helped. I would welcome a sacrifice for my efforts. Annabeth stood still as a statue. She could have said thank you. She could have promised to throw some barbecue on the brazier for Hera and forget the whole thing. But she clenched her jaw stubbornly. She looked just the way she had when she faced the Sphinx, like she wasn't going to accept an easy answer, even if it got her in serious trouble. I realized that was one of the things I liked best about Annabeth. Percy is right, she turned her back on the goddess. You're the one who doesn't belong, Queen Hera. So next time, thanks, but no thanks.
What have you done?
2 days later, after leaving camp, is Percy's birthday. Tyson and Paul show up. Paul and Percy have a heart-to-heart about his upcoming driver's ed classes and how Paul wishes to propose to Sally if it's okay with Percy. Percy, of course, says yes to the idea. Poseidon shows up and gives Percy with a sand dollar, telling him to spend it wisely, and also tells him that Typhon continues to stir and within a year will rise and head for New York. Then he leaves. After the party, Percy heads to his room and finds the moon lace in his pocket from Ogygia, planting it on the fire escape where he finds Nico D'Angelo, who says he knows of a way to beat Luke. Percy invites the son of Hades inside. This book had quite a lot to say about meeting your heroes and how it can often go not the way you had hoped. I can't believe how much Grover has grown. He's accomplished his dreams and already has his next goal in mind and is ready to take on the responsibility that comes with it, whether he has the support of others or not. And Annabeth and Percy are there to support him. Tyson has done his fair share of growing too. He's so different from the young Cyclops we first met in the Sea of Monsters, and again, he really proved himself as a hero. Annabeth and Percy's relationship grew and changed quite a bit. Rachel Elizabeth Dare complicated things for poor young Percy, as did the appearance of Calypso in his life. Aphrodite's promise to make his love life interesting proved true. Nico, poor Nico, my child. I've always related to Nico more, which I'm sure is not an uncommon feeling for readers. I'm glad he got the closure he needed since the loss of his sister, though. The minor gods are changing sides, the greatest monster to plague the Olympians is stirring under a mountain in the Pacific Northwest, and threatens to rise with the approaching final battle against the Titan Lord Kronos and his army of monsters and half-bloods. And all that stands in their way is a camp full of children. But that's all I have to say for now. Catch you all when I recap the final book in this series, The Last Olympian. Don't forget to leave a like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Bye!
Bye!